We retrace the bizarre route taken by the man police say murdered 4 University of Idaho students. We'll show you where he went right after the murders, then follow the path he took the following morning after he returned to the scene of the crime. Court TV is on the ground in Idaho following the evidence.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. It is just a criminal cliche. The criminal always returns to the scene of the crime. I don't know if it's true, but wow. In this case, the case of the man accused of murdering the 4 University of Idaho students, Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee, this to me is a fact that speaks volumes and can be very powerful and very persuasive for a prosecutor in a courtroom, like I was. It tells a story. Like, there's 2 questions, right, that a lot of people want to know. One is, like, why? Why would he allegedly do that? Why would he kill these 4 students? Why would he target them? Why? To me, the answer to that is very simple. And it's the same answer as to why the accused killer would return to the scene of the crime. He's a psychopath. He's a psychopathic killer. There's no connection to the lives of these people. There's no rational motive that you could speak about, or classic motive like money, jealousy, or anything like that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I would say to the jury if I were the prosecutor. This is a case, I mean, we could try to get inside his mind, but it's a dangerous place. It's a place where evil lives. The evil that could do what was done here, the same type of psychopathic evil that would want to return to the scene of the crime to see the reaction, to see what people are saying and what's happening there. That's who returns to the scene of the crime, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I would argue. That's part of the story. Now, another part of the story, of course, in addition to the why, is who. Who? And the who really begins and ends with the DNA that is found on the sheath that is left on the sheets of the bed. This DNA, which, according to the affidavit, matches the DNA of the biological son of the defendant's father. So I'm sure they're doing more testing, and will have more testing at trial to connect it to the defendant himself. But that's another part of the story, is who was there. And the evidence is in the DNA, in the knife sheath that is found on the sheets. Now, why would it be there, though? Why would, and this is the other question people wonder, why would he leave it there? That's sloppy. Well, there's 2 ways to explain it to a jury. And you don't have to tell them that you know for sure which way it is, because it's not an element of the crime. But again, it's a dangerous place to get into the mind of someone who was an evil, psychopathic killer. Maybe, just maybe, he left it there on purpose, to give a clue so he could sit back and watch how this investigation goes, to see if they can actually catch him, knowing that his DNA is not in the system. That's one argument. The other could be just, you know, in what happened that night, the adrenaline and everything that goes along with committing mass murder, you forget things. But you'd have to walk out of there with a knife without a sheath on it, and would you realize that? Was it done on purpose by a psychopathic killer? I think I could argue that to a jury. But then the jury's going to wonder, where's the knife, though? Where's the murder weapon? And that gets a little more complicated. And I think what I would argue is, he's not stupid. He's psychopathic, but he's not stupid. He's not going to get caught with the weapon. He's going to try to get rid of that weapon, ladies and gentlemen. He's not going to give investigators a slam dunk. This is a guy who wanted to watch to see if they could figure out who did it based upon little pieces of evidence left behind. Kind of like those psychopathic killers you see in the movies or on Batman. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Again, to me, you can put all this stuff together. While it doesn't make sense, you don't have the answers, it does make sense, and you do have the answers. Now, where could the knife be? Well, there, it might all be connected to his Hyundai Drive. After the murders, where did he go? And tonight, we're going to take a look at that crazy route that he's driving. I guess a quick drive from his apartment to the murder scene, to the crime scene. There's a quick drive back. But that's not what he does. That's not what he does afterwards, and that's not what he does after he returns to the scene of the crime. Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter is tracing those steps tonight.
Just hours after police say 4 college students were brutally stabbed inside this home in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, the alleged killer returned to the scene. Bryan Kohberger's cell phone allegedly shows him here at 9:12 a.m. and staying for about 10 minutes. But that isn't the only location police placed Kohberger that day in the hours after the murders. According to the probable cause affidavit, Bryan Kohberger's cell phone records show him moving south from Pullman, Washington, where he lived in an on-campus apartment at Washington State University, towards Lewiston, Idaho, about a 50-minute drive. The town of Lewiston is located on the border of Washington State, where just across the Snake River is the bordering town of Clarkston, Washington. It was here at approximately 12:36 p.m. November 13th, 2022, when cell phone records placed Kohberger's vehicle here on Port Drive next to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand. The surveillance videos here at the U.S. Chef store show his white Hyundai Elantra drive past. Then, just 10 minutes later, at 12:46 p.m., Kohberger's cell phone records place him at the nearby Albertsons grocery store. Surveillance video at 12:49 p.m. shows Kohberger walking through the store and purchasing unknown items at the checkout. He leaves at approximately 1:04 p.m. The probable cause affidavit does not indicate location data for the next few hours of the day. It isn't until around 5:30 p.m. that the affidavit indicates Kohberger's cell phone located in Johnson, Idaho. But there is no Johnson, Idaho. The affidavit may have meant this community of Johnson, Washington, right on the border of Idaho State. It's a location consistent with the affidavit's route, and it's surrounded by cell phone towers. For 3 minutes from 5:32 to 5:36 p.m. November 13, 2022, Kohberger's cell phone pings here near the community of Johnson. But then his cell phone goes dark for 3 hours. The affidavit notes that this location in Johnson is consistent with the phone being in the same area that it traveled in the hours immediately following the murders. And according to the affidavit, from 5:36 p.m. when it was in Johnson until 8:30 p.m. November 13th, Kohberger's phone stopped reporting to the network, meaning he turned it off, put it in airplane mode, or the phone was in an area without cell coverage. While the probable cause affidavit does provide new revelations into the movements of the alleged killer in the hours after the murders, there are still many questions that remain. Why did he drive so far to the grocery store? What did he buy there? Did he get rid of that murder weapon and other incriminating evidence along the way? Or during that 3-hour period, his phone went dark? For now, we wait, and answers may only come during his trial. Reporting in Moscow, Idaho, Chanley Painter, Court TV.
That is eye-opening. Absolutely eye-opening when you talk about what it looks like out there and the places he went. Middle of nowhere, folks. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, who was in the middle of nowhere today, but tonight she's joining us from Washington State University campus, where the defendant used to work and study. Chanley, great to see you. Wow. Tell us a little bit more about the places that he visited. I mean, that is so revealing, the video actually getting to see what these roads and towns look like. There's nobody there.
Exactly. So I'm really pleased that we were able to bring this to our viewers, because this is about a 50-minute drive. We're here in Pullman, Washington. I'm not far from his apartment here on Washington State University campus, and you would head directly south, again, for almost an hour. We're virtually nothing. You're surrounded by just fields, farmland. You can see, though, there's a lot of cell phone towers between here and Lewiston-Clarkston area, which makes me believe that a phone would not be without cell phone service in any of the areas. I did not experience that in any of the places, as rural as we were, trying to retrace the movements of Bryan Kohberger based on his cell phone on November 13th, 2022, as well as, today. So here's some video. I mean, this is what it looks like. This is video of the Snake River, where it intersects with Clearwater River. This is really on the border of Washington State and Idaho, where Lewiston and Clarkston are, that we showed you in the package. And, speaking to so many locals as we made this trek yesterday and today, this is a river that moves swiftly, Vinny. It's a fast-moving river. There's a lot of fishing boats out on the river. Is this a possible spot where items could have been discarded along this journey and this trip? And where his phone last pinged in Johnson, Washington area, which we had to do some court TV investigation to find this area of Johnson, Vinny. The affidavit says Johnson, Idaho. There is not a Johnson, Idaho. We believe, based on our investigation, based on what this affidavit says, Johnson, Washington, it's a community, it's a neighborhood, it's an old farming community, neighborhood, as they call it, where there are so many cell phone towers. So he could have actually either been in Johnson, here's a map depicting this route that we took, or he could have been close by. He could have been on the main 195 highway and still pinged on the tower serving the Johnson, Washington area, or even anywhere around that area, because there are so many towers. So it was just interesting to see the remoteness of the drive from here in Pullman, Washington, south to Lewiston and Clarkston, the next major town. There's the only sign in the state of Washington to Johnson right there that we just showed. We scoured the area. There is, if you put in Google Maps, just to mention, in Idaho, Johnson, Idaho, Google Maps will take you about 2.5 hours from here towards the Nez Perce National Forest. That is not a town. It is a road called Johnson Road. It could have been an old kind of community, or what they call a gray farming grange here in this part of the U.S. But that location, but it just does not fit with the facts of the affidavit saying that this particular location in Johnson would have been consistent with the route he took immediately after the murders, hours before, allegedly.
That's amazing that you picked up on a mistake in the affidavit, and it's understandable because, Washington, Idaho, right next to each other, traveling back and forth. It's a little sloppy. I'll give you that. Absolutely sloppy. But what you're saying makes a lot more sense than being 2.5 hours away on some road, because that makes no sense. And this is much more consistent. It seemed like there was a lot of flat land that you were driving over. Is that consistent with what you experienced today, or is it rolling hills? It doesn't seem to be any sort of dense wooded areas, though.
No dense wooded areas. That was the 2.5 hours away, which we did drive that yesterday. That was hilly. But this route that is alleged in this affidavit is rolling hills, farmland, not a lot of trees, remoteness. There are creeks, small rivers that possibly things could be disposed of, but there are a lot of also gravel roads. So when we're going to Johnson community in Washington on the border there, you have to take a couple gravel roads, Vinny, to actually reach that community. And this is what it looks like. This is from today. We took this on our drive to the community of Johnson, but this is what it looks like. Not a lot of trees. And remember, when he was making this around 5:30 at night, it would have been dark at the time that he was pinging from these multiple cell phone towers in that area.
Yes, and super dark. No street lights, unbelievable, and it makes no sense. I'm trying to think of a reason to go down there. Albertsons is great. Love Albertsons, but I'm sure there's a place a little bit closer that you could go to.
Yes,
you don't need to go to that one. All right, let's talk about what's happening at the University of Idaho. Students coming back to campus, and students coming back to campus probably at Washington State also.
Absolutely. Today was the first day back for Washington State University, where I'm standing, but the University of Idaho, about 20 minutes from here, across the border. Their first day is Wednesday, but Vinny, I can already tell, I was there earlier today, such a difference, a stark difference from the end of last semester when we were here reporting on this case to just this week and the days leading up to the semester beginning there at University of Idaho. A lot more students and presence of people and vehicles in the area, even near the crime scene. And you can just tell that from all those I've talked to, there's this sense of relief. Let's take a listen to someone I caught up with today.
I think with the arrest, a lot more people will feel a bit safer to come back. But I still think there's a little bit of fear going around just because we haven't seen anything like this for about 7 years. And so it's just a bit shocking to this community.
And then here on the campus of Washington State University, today was the first day back. It was so busy. In fact, there were tons of students in this immediate area until just earlier, just a little while ago. But we've heard everything from students being glad now that there's this arrest. They're thankful. They're feeling okay. From even a student telling me he was angry that the police said, oh, there's no threat, there's no threat. And then turns out the person was here, someone that went to school with them and lived so close. But actually, remember, Bryan Kohberger, he went to school here. He was in his first semester as a graduate student working on his PhD in criminology, criminal justice, a building that's right behind me to my right. And he also, as a part of that program, Vinny, was a teaching assistant and helped teach, get this, a criminal law class last semester. And I met one of his students today. Let's watch.
He was my TA last semester, and he basically just graded our papers and was there if we needed extra help outside of class. He wasn't always there. He would come in, be there for 10 minutes, leave, not say much. So he didn't really do that much, but you could tell there was some off about him. Very quiet, calculated about what he says. And you can kind of see that in the videos of him.
So that's Sky, his student, Vinny. This was a criminal law class. So here we have Bryan Kohberger teaching college students criminal law, procedure, process, unfolding, and guess who's living that out right now? Bryan Kohberger. The student goes on to tell me that not only was he very quiet, but that he was a tough grader in class, but he was just not that talkative. And he told me that the Kohberger that we're seeing in court, walk in, that's kind of stoic, is the exact same demeanor that he exhibited in class, Vinny.
No change. And the students are great. I mean, that's scary, right? This was his TA. This was a guy who was still out there and about, and you don't know if he's accused of committing 4 murders. What would stop him from 5, 6, 7, 8? He's in custody now, though. All right, Chanley, stay where you are. We have more with Chanley Painter. We're going to zero in on some of the areas where the murder weapon maybe could be, because there's a lot of time spent there off the radar. We'll zero in on that. Plus, coming up next hour.
In Newport News, Virginia, a 6-year-old boy accused of bringing a gun to school and purposely shooting his teacher, who survived. What should happen to this 6-year-old, and what about his parents?
This is an unprecedented situation that we're dealing with. A 6-year-old. It is unprecedented.
A 74-year-old woman accused of bludgeoning her husband and leaving him to die.
No food, no water, no medical attention.
The Left for Dead murder trial continues Tuesday at 9/8 Central on Court TV. 4 college students brutally murdered and a suspect now in custody. Court TV's Chanley Painter is on the ground with what we know about the alleged killer and what's next.
We'll have the latest details on the investigation.
Live updates all this week on
The cell phone evidence in the Idaho case, to me, very, very revealing and telling and powerful for prosecutors to use in court during the trial. Take a look here. This is the cell phone movements before and after the murders. 2:42 a.m. The defendant's phone pings at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment G201, Pullman, Washington. 2:47, for about 5 minutes, his phone data is consistent with him leaving his apartment, traveling through Pullman, Washington. 4:48 a.m. This is afterwards now. His phone does not report to the network again until approximately 4:48, locating the phone in Idaho State Highway 95 south of Moscow, near Blaine, Idaho. 5:30, the phone is consistent, traveling back to his apartment. So with this, you can take a look. If you connect the dots, right? And you've got this strange loop going south from Moscow down and then back up to Pullman. A drive, if you go straight, like 10, 12 minutes. Let's bring back in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter. Let's talk about later that morning now, Chanley. I started the whole segment tonight talking about a criminal returning to the crime, the scene of the crime, which is what they allege here. What did he do that morning and later that day?
Interesting, the next morning, without turning his cell phone off, taking it with him in the white Hyundai Elantra, he makes the most direct path from his apartment here in Pullman to Moscow, where the crime scene is, according to this affidavit, at 9:12 a.m. He's in Moscow, Idaho, at the crime scene, stays about 10 minutes, and then returns back on that direct route to Pullman. He's home by 9:32, I believe is what the affidavit says. So then, later that afternoon, he makes his way south. 12:36, he is now south, about 50 minutes away in Clarkston, Washington, through Lewiston at Kate's Cup of Joe. He doesn't get a cup of coffee there. He doesn't stop in and get a cup of coffee. He's driving past this. His phone pings there, and the neighbor across the parking lot, that U.S. Chef store, catches his white Hyundai Elantra driving past on their surveillance video at 12:46 p.m. And then at 12:46 p.m., just down the road, couple blocks away, he's at Albertson's grocery store. It's all right there together, Vinny. He's going in the store. He's seen on surveillance video. I've been in this store. There are security cameras all over this store. They can see what he's buying. They don't say it in the affidavit, but they can see what he's buying. There are security cameras above the checkout counters, so they know what he bought there. They just aren't telling us, Vinny. And his Hyundai Elantra is seen there as well. He leaves Albertsons about 1:04 p.m. Then there are several hours where the affidavit doesn't say where he is. They probably know where he is, but they aren't saying. So at 5:32 and 5:36, for 3 minutes, he is in Johnson. Now, not Johnson, Idaho, like the affidavit says. My Court TV investigation shows that this is the likely area, Johnson, Washington. It's a community there. His phone goes dark. It last pings in this area, and it goes dark for 3 hours, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. And this area of Johnson, maybe 20 minutes from his home. You go north, there's a couple ways you can get back on the main highway and go into Pullman, or there's a back way on Johnson Road that also brings you in here to Pullman, Vinny.
So is there any overlap? Is it the same route that they allege right after the murders? Because I'm looking at it, and we had a loop, and I see kind of like half a loop there. What can you tell us?
Yeah. There is, Vinny, and the affidavit points this out, that where his phone is pinging there at Johnson is consistent with the same route he took hours before, allegedly immediately after the murders. Here's the maps put together, and you can see where they coincide with each other. So he's returning to a lot of the similar areas that his phone pinged in the immediate hours after the murder. I've spoken, again, with my investigation, to a lot of locals there, especially around the Johnson area, and there is a well-known back road that gets you from Moscow to Pullman. It is called Thorn Creek Road. It's the white line you see kind of cutting in between Highway 95 and 195, and one's Idaho, one's Washington. It crosses the state lines there. It is a back road, less people, no cameras, but it's paved. It is well known here because used to, back in the day, Vinny, Moscow had a drinking age of 19, so people would come to Moscow over state lines, drink, and they didn't want to take that direct route back over the state lines, so they would go this kind of a horseshoe shape, the back roads, and then come up from Pullman from the back way to avoid onlookers. And so that is what it looks like here, and could be a likely spot. And he probably maybe knew this route. It's well known by locals here.
Wow. And Chanley, again, you showed us the video from the area. There are a few bodies of water, some rivers, but a lot of flat farmland there as well. But as we know, driving in the dark. Chanley Painter, great work. I know we're going to speak next hour. Right now, let's bring in our investigators. Joining me in Chicago, Illinois, private investigator, publisher of Victims News Online, Erica Morse is with us. And in Los Angeles, California, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon. Great to see you both tonight. Erica, what are your thoughts about this crazy drive that's alleged after the murders, and then the following, it's sort of the following morning, right? He returns to the scene of the crime and then seems to go down south again to this area, stopping at Albertsons and driving past the coffee shop.
Well, the whole thing's just crazy, and we're learning, more and more every day. I kind of reference it to what you would call an old bootlegger's road. It's just the easy way back and forth, and it is the road less traveled. So, of course, that's the way he's going to try to move. In terms of going back to the scene of the crime the next day, the one thing that I get stuck on, this was a massive situation. And at one point, he was going to check the news. No coverage, no anything, no mention of this. If he had a conscience at all, I would expect he was starting to get nervous. Then he goes back and checks, no activity. By then, I might make a couple stops and consider heading out of town.
Bobby Chacon, one of my thoughts here is that we don't have a murder weapon, and there's opportunity, it seems, in this route, lots of places. Do you think there's any chance, if the killer ditched the knife somewhere along this horseshoe-shaped route between Moscow and Pullman, is there any chance of finding it?
Well, sure, there's a chance. I mean, it's a large area and it's a difficult way to search. For 19 years, I ran the FBI's underwater search and recovery team. So, when I peeked up when Chanley was talking about those rivers, because my team would be in the water searching, those bodies of water. That's typically what we did. It's also possible if he didn't bury it that a hunter comes across it or somebody walking their dog comes across it. So I think people along these routes should be, on the lookout, because we can enlist the community's help in this kind of thing. So, it's a long area. It would be tough to even know where to start to search if you were actually going to do a search without anything to go on. But it's possible that somebody else finds it, somebody out in the community, if their heads up, finds it, or if they have, we used to do hunch searches, what we called hunch searches, where I dropped my team under a bridge, just as a hunch that it might be there without any other information indicating it was there. So yeah, it's possible if he didn't do a good job, or even if a lot of criminals think that just because they throw something in the water, it's gone forever, and that's, my team proved that wrong over and over again. Yeah, it is possible.
So, Bob, we just have a couple seconds here, though. I'm just trying to picture this. So you said you dropped your team under a bridge. So how many people would go in there, and how visible are there machines to try to figure out, or is it just what you're looking at?
No, it's zero visibility. We use metal detectors, handheld metal detectors. We put a grid under the bridge. We know how far approximately out a person could possibly throw it. We'd set up a grid and we'd systematically cover the grid, and then we would expand the grid if we don't find it. We use metal detectors because it'd be pitch black, but we would always find what we were looking for using that method, and we would search large areas and just keep expanding the search area until we found it or ruled it out too far to throw off the bridge.